When we speak of God teaching us to clean the mind, we are not referring to a moral checklist or the sterile sweep of superficial positivity. We are speaking of a deeper kind of cleansing, the kind that pulls the roots of shadow from the soil of the soul. The divine is not a distant judge, but an inner whisper urging us toward wholeness, and the journey of cleansing the mind is not an escape from darkness, but a transformation through it. The dirt is not to be feared. It is not a sign of failure, nor a symbol of moral corruption. It is the raw material of your becoming. It is where the real work begins. What we often call dirt, in the mind, our intrusive thoughts, suppressed desires, hidden fears, is not there by accident. It is not pollution to be scrubbed away in shame. It is the buried history of your inner life, the sediment of your unlived experiences. These thoughts and feelings you try to push away are not enemies, they are invitations. They speak in the language of dreams, impulses, triggers, and discomfort. They say, "Look here, you have not made peace with this part of yourself." God, in His infinite intelligence, does not remove this dirt with divine force. He does not banish it with judgment, He reveals it. He brings it to the surface, and that surfacing often feels like chaos, like you're losing control, like your mind is spiraling into darkness, but that is only because the unconscious is becoming conscious. What was hidden is being shown, not to shame you, but to liberate you. This dirt you fear is sacred. It contains the very substance from which your higher self can grow. Just as a seed must be buried in the soil before it can rise, your soul must first descend into the messiness of your psyche before it can awaken. To clean your mind, you do not start by sweeping away the dirt. You start by touching it. Understanding it, listening to what it has to say. Each speck of inner dust contains a fragment of your unloved self. When you see it clearly, when you embrace it, it no longer controls you from the shadows. It becomes a part of your wholeness. The spiritual journey does not bypass the mud, it passes through it. God leads you to the dirt not to leave you there, but to teach you how to transform it into depth, into wisdom, into compassion. The dirt is not a curse, it is the compost of the soul. The light of the divine is not a harsh spotlight that exposes you to condemnation. It is a gentle flame that illuminates what has long remained hidden within. It does not come to shame, but to reveal. It does not burn to destroy, but to warm the places that have been cold and abandoned. This light is not interested in perfection. It is interested in truth. And the truth is this: the parts of you you've tried to exile, your anger, your envy, your lust, your fear, are not foreign intruders. They are forgotten children of your own soul, waiting to be brought home. When people imagine divine light, they often associate it with purity so blinding that it erases all flaws. But that is not how true healing works. The light that comes from the sacred does not ask you to erase yourself. It asks you to see yourself fully, deeply, without masks. It asks you to turn toward the parts of your psyche that you have locked away in shame. These shadows, these unconscious drives and impulses, are not demonic forces to be cast out. They are disowned aspects of your own humanity. To clean your mind, the divine does not demand repression. It invites reflection. This light reaches into the depths of your being, into the caverns of memory, trauma, and forgotten longings. It does not demand that you destroy the shadow. It asks that you befriend it, that you understand it, that you take responsibility for it, not as a burden, but as a key to your transformation. The light teaches you to see nuance, to understand that evil is not always loud and dramatic. It is often the quiet denial of your own truth. And goodness is not about being untouched by darkness. It is about making peace with it. The sacred light helps you integrate what is divided within you. It does not demand a sanitized soul, but a unified one. In this illumination, you begin to realize that the things you feared in yourself were not monsters, but messages. They were trying to show you what you needed to learn, what you needed to feel, what you needed to release. The divine shines not to purify by force, but to awaken by love. It sees all of you and says, even this belongs. Even this can be redeemed. This is the sacred task of cleaning the mind, not bleaching it white, but coloring it whole. To cleanse the mind is not to grip it tightly with rules, commands, or rigid discipline. It is not to dominate every thought or banish every shadow that arises. That is not cleansing. That is suppression disguised as virtue. True cleansing does not begin with control. It begins with surrender, and surrender is not weakness. It is the strength to let go of the illusion that you must master everything within you to be worthy. The sacred does not demand that you become a perfect warden of your thoughts. It asks that you become a witness, an honest, open presence to your inner life. The more you try to control the mind with fear, with judgment, with shame, the more it resists you. The more chaos it breeds in secret. Control tries to cage what must be understood. It silences what needs to speak. It polishes the surface while letting the basement flood. Surrender, on the other hand, is the quiet courage to allow your mind to speak its truth, to allow thoughts to rise and fall like waves without clinging to them or fighting them. It is the willingness to sit in the discomfort of your own psyche without trying to escape it. When you surrender, you become a participant in your inner life, not its tyrant. You begin to listen, not to the noise of fear, but to the deeper signal beneath it. You start hearing the quiet voice of wisdom that control has long drowned out. This kind of surrender is sacred. It does not mean giving up your power, it means stepping into a different kind of power, a power rooted not in domination, but in trust. Trust that what rises in you is not random. Trust that what appears in your awareness is there to be seen, felt, and metabolized. God teaches through surrender because it opens the door to communion with your deeper self, with the unconscious, with the divine itself. Cleansing the mind in this way becomes an act of devotion, not punishment. It is no longer about purging what is bad, but about accepting what is human, not about casting out imperfection, but about making room for healing. You begin to realize that what needs cleansing is not the thoughts themselves, but the way you relate to them, the way you fear them, cling to them, judge them. When you surrender, you no longer wage war within. You invite peace. You stop trying to control the river of your consciousness, and instead learn to swim in its currents. You trust that God is in the flow, not in the fight. You begin to understand that real purification is not the result of force, but the fruit of stillness, of patience, of grace. And in that grace, the mind begins to quiet, not because it is silenced, but because it is finally heard. What you carry within you does not stay hidden. It echoes outward, shaping the way you see, feel, and respond to the world around you. The mind is not just a receiver of impressions, it is a projector of meaning. It filters every experience through the lens of your inner landscape. When your inner world is filled with unresolved wounds, unacknowledged fears, and suppressed emotions, the outer world becomes a reflection of that unrest. You begin to see threats where there are none, rejection where there is neutrality, and hostility where there is simply misunderstanding. You do not just see reality, you interpret it, and the state of your inner world determines the quality of that interpretation. If your heart holds bitterness, the world will seem cruel. If your thoughts are soaked in shame, every interaction will feel like judgment. If you are dominated by unconscious fear, life will appear dangerous even when it is offering you peace. What remains unhealed within you does not stay quiet. It shapes the color of your days, the tone of your relationships, the meaning you assign to events. The world becomes your mirror. You think you are observing it, but often you are only seeing yourself in it. Your unlived stories, your hidden beliefs, your unmet needs. God teaches you to cleanse your mind not to protect others from you, but to free you from the distorted images you've been projecting. The anger you cannot face in yourself will appear in everyone else. The love you withhold from yourself will seem absent in the world. What is disowned within becomes a ghost that haunts your perception. But when you begin to cleanse your inner world, when you bring awareness to the patterns, forgiveness to the wounds, and light to the shadows, everything outside begins to shift. You see more clearly. You listen without defense. You respond instead of reacting. You begin to witness life not as an endless repetition of your past, but as an unfolding of new possibilities. Your relationships deepen. Your creativity expands. Even challenges feel different, not as punishments but as invitations. This is not a magical promise that everything becomes easy, but it is a sacred truth. When your inner world finds peace, your outer world reflects more harmony. When you learn to love what's inside, you stop chasing validation outside. When you become aware of your unconscious, you stop blaming others for what is yours to heal. This is why the inner work is not selfish. It is the most generous act you can offer the world. For the cleaner your perception, the more clearly you see others, not as enemies or projections, but as souls on their own path. In this way, the cleansing of the mind becomes a quiet revolution. It changes how you live, how you love, how you lead. Not by changing the world, but by changing the one who sees it. And in doing so, the outer world becomes less of a battlefield and more of a reflection, one that invites deeper compassion, truer connection, and lasting peace. The goal of cleansing the mind is not to become flawless, but to become whole. Wholeness does not mean being free of darkness, it means being in relationship with it. A pure mind, as many imagine it, is one scrubbed of every unwanted thought, every uncomfortable emotion, every trace of shadow. But such purity is an illusion, and the pursuit of it often becomes another mask, another way to hide from what is real. What the soul truly longs for is not purity, but integration, to know itself fully, to hold all its pieces with compassion. The divine does not ask for a mind free from all imperfection. What it desires is a mind that no longer hides from itself, a mind that does not exile its sorrow, its rage, its longing, or its fear, but learns to welcome them as messengers. These elements are not enemies of your growth. They are the raw material of transformation. They do not need to be destroyed. They need to be seen, listened to, and held with honesty. To be whole is to become a container vast enough to include all of yourself. Not just the light, but the darkness too. Not just the joy, but the grief. Not just the wisdom, but the confusion. When you stop trying to purify yourself into some idealized image of goodness, you begin to heal. You begin to realize that even your flaws carry purpose, even your wounds carry wisdom, even your mistakes have taught you something essential about who you are. Wholeness is not the absence of struggle. It is the capacity to remain present through it. It is the knowing that you do not have to be perfect to be worthy, that your value is not in how little you fall, but in how deeply you are willing to face yourself when you do. A whole mind does not seek to erase the past it learns from it. It does not try to eliminate fear it learns to walk with it. It does not deny the existence of shadow it learns to cast light through it. This is what God calls you toward, not a hollow form of spiritual perfection, but a courageous intimacy with your full humanity. And when you reach that kind of inner integration, your presence changes. You become someone who no longer needs to pretend. You become someone who holds space for others because you've learned to hold space for yourself. You become a sanctuary, not because you are spotless, but because you are real. Wholeness is where the sacred dwells, not in perfection, but in the unity of all parts, reconciled and redeemed. And so the journey of cleansing the mind is not a war against yourself, but a return to yourself. A return to the truth that everything within you belongs, not to be indulged, not to be suppressed, but to be understood and integrated. This is the deeper healing. This is the divine instruction, not to be clean in the eyes of the world, but to be whole in the eyes of the soul.